Yes, we begin with the House vote tonight to sanction Congresswoman Margie Taylor Greene for her bigoted and delusional views. Also, the top House Republicans' refusal to discipline her, along with most members of the party. That and her own non-apology apology, which amounted to excuses and rationalizations, blame shifting, and lies, instead of any honest show of contrition as a member of that party that once claimed to stand for personal responsibility. The vote was 230 to 199 to strip her of her seats on the Budget and Education and Labor Committees. 11 Republicans joining the Democratic majority, including Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who was not impressed by what she said at a Republican Party conference last night.
Kevin McCarthy would have us believe she gave some serious apology. What did you hear?
Yeah, so I don't like to go into a ton of detail from conference.
How about some?
I'll tell you this. Yeah, I'll give you some, which is I didn't hear an apology.
So no apology last night, he says, and certainly from what we heard today of her on the floor, none today. She spoke at the chamber and she didn't apologize. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, before we go any further on her excuses and finger pointing, we just want to pause for a second and just let you listen to her words and views that got her and all of us to this point. These aren't her words. It's her bigotry, and these are her conspiracy theories, her words, her bigotry, and her lies.
Many Americans are like blind sheep, just going through life, not paying attention. There is invasion into our government offices right now. How do you get avid gun owners and people that support the Second Amendment to give up their guns? Maybe you accomplish that by performing a mass shooting into a crowd. You make them scared, you make them victims, and you change their mindset. The so-called plane that crashed into the Pentagon. It's odd, there's never any evidence shown for a plane in the Pentagon. Kennedy getting killed in the plane crash. That's another one of those Clinton murders, right? Q is a patriot. We know that for sure. Again, I don't have any proof of this, but we're talking about who is Q, so I'm going to tell you what he says. Many in our government are actively worshiping Satan, or they call Moloch. Q is saying that they participate in pedophilia and spirit cooking. We already saw there was an email came out of the WikiLeaks emails where Cheryl Knowles, and she told Hillary Clinton in an email that she was going to sacrifice a chicken to Moloch in her backyard. Saudi Arabia, the Rothschilds, and Soros, he says, are the puppet masters that fund this global evil. There's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take this global cable of Satan-worshiping pedophiles out.
She's also pushed the conspiracy theory that California wildfires were started by space lasers controlled by the Rothschilds, a family name which has been invoked by anti-Semites for generations. The Congresswoman has also endorsed the conspiracy theory that the Sandy Hook school shooting was staged, agreeing with a Facebook commentator who posted, quote, "None of the school shootings were real or done by the ones who were supposedly arrested for them." By the way, that post is no longer available. Congresswoman Greene also agreed with a now-deleted claim that the Parkland High School shooting was a so-called false flag operation. Now to her effort to rationalize or explain away some of that, on QAnon, here's what she said today.
I stumbled across something, and this was at the end of 2017, called QAnon. Well, these posts were mainly about this Russian collusion information. A lot of it was some of what I would see on the news at night, and I got very interested in it. Later in 2018, when I started finding misinformation, lies, things that were not true in these QAnon posts, I stopped believing it.
That appears to be a lie. If, in fact, she had stopped believing by 2018, then why was she saying this in 2019 when she endorsed the QAnon conspiracy about key officials, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg among them, being replaced by body doubles?
This woman has been drawn over for how many years, and all of a sudden she's walking straight upright like it's a whole new person.
Almost like
Do
a
you
body
believe
double like
that
Hillary
is
Clinton.
true?
Yeah, like
Yes.
the body double for Hillary Clinton. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
I do not believe that was Ruth. No, I don't think so.
That was in February 2019. She was still endorsing QAnon conspiracy theories. In fact, as recently as December of last year, a month after she was elected, she was still on board, praising an article promoting the cult in a now-deleted December 4th tweet. That same month, she told CNN's Ryan Nobles this about QAnon followers when asked to comment on House Speaker Pelosi's remarks about her ties to the cult.
I think it's unfair to criticize regular American people that just are looking things up on the internet.
So any claim by the Congresswoman that her dalliance with QAnon was incidental, brief, and more than 2 years ago is belied by her own statements and actions. She was a deep believer. In this statement today, again on the House floor at the seat of American democracy, she revealed an earlier explanation of her actions to also be a lie.
Because if it weren't for the Facebook post and comments that I liked in 2018, I wouldn't be standing here today, and you couldn't point a finger and accuse me of anything wrong.
She's saying she liked a series of posts and comments on hateful topics. Not by the way that she's sorry for liking them, only that her liking them got her in trouble. At any rate, she says she liked them. Except just last week, she was trying to suggest she didn't really like them, that she wasn't really responsible. Listen to how much work the passive voice is doing in this tweet. Over the years, I've had teams of people manage my pages. Many posts have been liked. Many posts have been shared. Some did not represent my views, especially the ones that CNN is about to spread across the internet. That was last week. Her saying many posts have been liked. Many posts have been shared. By whom? By her? By her teams of people? I mean, she isn't exactly a head of state. How many teams of people have been tweeting for her? Why would she have anyone do that for her? In any case, her hiding from accountability behind the passive voice and blame shifting, it didn't reach its apex there. It was just a warm-up for this masterpiece today.
Because I was upset about things and didn't trust the government, really, because the people here weren't doing the things that I thought they should be doing for us, the things that I just told you I cared about. And I want you to know, a lot of Americans don't trust our government, and that's sad. The problem with that is, though, is I was allowed to believe things that weren't true, and I would ask questions about them and talk about them. And that is absolutely what I regret.
I mean, didn't Republicans used to say they were the party of personal responsibility? I mean, did you get what she just said? She's saying she didn't trust the government, like a lot of people, and the problem with that is she was allowed to believe things that weren't true and talk about them. So it's the government's fault that she was allowed to believe things that weren't true? I mean, she could have just said, you know what, I fell for a hoax. I believed all this stuff that was anti-Semitic, and it wasn't true, and I'm sorry, and I changed my mind. But she didn't say that. She says she's blaming, she was allowed to do this. Like, as if, you know, if someone didn't step in and stop us, we would all drink up hateful anti-Semitic paranoid conspiracy theories like mother's milk. The Congresswoman might not know it, but most people have more decency than that, and most people own up to their mistakes. But she didn't. And you know why? Because she's making money hand over fist right now from people who believe all the things that she believed and seems like still believes. The anti-Semitism, the QAnon conspiracy hoaxers, the 9/11 deniers. She won't renounce the specific things she has claimed in the past because she wants the support of those people still. Even when she was afraid of being taken off her committees, which is what ultimately has now happened, she said, okay, fine. In an interview with the Examiner yesterday, she said, okay, fine. They'll give me more time to do what, you know, the things that are important to me. Fundraise. And she's been fundraising off this for weeks now. She could have clearly spelled out all the absurd beliefs of QAnon today, but she didn't. She could have pointed out the anti-Semitism at the heart of some of her past statements and apologized for that. She didn't. She could have said today, of course a plane full of our fellow citizens was flown into the Pentagon. And that was a horror. But did she say that? No. She spoke about 9/11 broadly.
I also want to tell you 9/11 absolutely happened. I remember that day crying all day long watching it on the news. And it's a tragedy for anyone to say it didn't happen. And so that I definitely want to tell you, I do not believe that it's fake.
Okay. She's saying 9/11 happened, and she cried all day. She doesn't believe that 9/11 is fake. But even 9/11 deniers admit 9/11 happened. They just believe it was an inside job, that there weren't planes blown, that these things were blown up from inside. It was a plot, a conspiracy, whatever crazy notion they have. They believe an explosion occurred at the Pentagon, but claim it wasn't a plane hijacked by terrorists, a plane full of men, women, and children. That's what Margie Taylor Greene herself has said.
The so-called plane that crashed into the Pentagon. It's odd, there's never any evidence shown for a plane in the Pentagon.
So, despite saying 9/11 absolutely happened, she hasn't taken that plane conspiracy hoax back. And you know what else we didn't hear from her today? Remorse. At all. She expressed no remorse for the anguish that she inflicted in perpetuating such an ugly lie about a trauma that she herself claims to have cried all day over. She felt remorse that she'd been allowed to believe things that weren't true. Instead, in her very next breath, she lashed out at the media at so-called cancel culture, then having not accepted any responsibility for anything she said, the Congresswoman from Georgia tried to shove it all down the memory hole.
These were words of the past, and these things do not represent me. They do not represent my district, and they do not represent my values.
These are words of the past. These things do not represent me. These aren't the droids you're looking for. I mean, think of this. Think of the possibilities. Your Honor, when I told that bank clerk to hand over the money, those were words of my past. These things do not represent me. Or maybe, gee, Mr. Smithers, when I endorsed that racist post by the local KKK, that was before I even thought of applying for a job here. They were words of the past, and these things do not represent me. You might not buy it, the judge might not buy it, but Colorado Congressman Ken Buck seems to.
I think a number of the statements that she made and liked on social media were inappropriate. She has apologized over and over again for those, and I think it's clear that she is a freshman, and those statements were made before she came into Congress.
They were made 3 years ago, 2 years ago. You know, before she realized she might actually be able to win a seat in Congress, before she hired PR people and consultants who told her, you gotta clean up the crazy, just a bit. You still need money from the crazy, so don't clean up too much, but you gotta clean up just a little bit. You just need to be remorseful enough so that your fellow Republicans can welcome you into the fold. Well, they have. The Congresswoman's not apologized over and over again, as Mr. Buck said. She didn't last night, according to Congressman Kinzinger, and as you've seen, she didn't today. She took no true responsibility for anything, and that's just the way things go now. Nobody apologizes for things, not politicians, it seems. Certainly not the followers of the former president, which seems to be okay with Republican leaders in the House who voted not to discipline her today and said this after declining to discipline her last night.
You know, it's just an example. This Republican Party is a very big tent. Everyone's invited in.
So, big tent for the party or big top? Perspective now from a former ringmaster, Anthony Scaramucci, who served briefly as communications director in the Trump